Hey y'all, welcome to the podcast. At the end of this podcast, you're going to see me come back on the screen. I'm going to explain some things that have been going on. If you're interested in that, stick around to the end. But there's two stories in this podcast, and they're both pretty good. I appreciate you clicking on the video. Let's do this. All right, here we go. I grew up on a 40-acre sand and rock farm in Oklahoma. I'm 74 years old now, but back when I was 12, I got a job driving a tractor during the hay harvest at 25 cents an hour. Now that may not sound like much now, but my allowance was 25 cents a week, so it was a windfall for me. Plus, riding in a tractor all day was far less work than the chores I had to do at the farm. I would cut, rake, and bale for 10 or 12 hours at a time. Well, that added up to $3 on most days. To me, that was a fortune. My boss offered lunch to his workers, but he charged a quarter for a jam sandwich. Now, a jam sandwich was a piece of bologna jammed between two pieces of bread, and we were lucky he didn't charge for the water. The season was coming to an end with wet weather on the horizon and a quarter of the field still on the ground. My boss wanted it cut and raked and baled and in the barn before the rain hit the next morning. So he asked me if I'd stay until the job was finished. I was tired to the toenails, but it meant more money, so I said yes. By midnight, everyone else was headed home. My boss usually picked me up each morning and dropped me off at the day's end, but he was overly tired, and I suspected that he may have tipped a few throughout the day. He asked if I could walk home that night. "It's just a couple of miles," he said. "Keep the moon over your shoulder and you'll be fine." Neither of us remembered the river and the marsh that lay between me and the house, and besides, I was young, and it didn't seem like a big problem to me. The moon was full and bright as I entered the woods. The storm was still in the distance, but occasional bolts of lightning flickered on the horizon to remind me that it was getting close. It had been 2 hours, and I was beginning to cuss my boss and the swamp and my life in general. I'd kept the moon over my shoulder like my boss had said to do, but I was lost. Mostly I thought about my grandmother. I knew she would be sitting on the front porch waiting for me and worried to death. My granny was a little old lady who never used rough words and rarely raised her voice unless she was provoked. When that happened, she was a force to be reckoned with. Once, I not so accidentally shot her in the backside with my BB gun. That was not a good day for either of us. The wind was picking up and singing in the treetops with the approaching storm. I was working my way out of a deeper pool that I'd stumbled into when I heard something that sounded like more than just wind. Staring into the dark abyss that was the swamp, I saw what I thought must be a mountain lion sitting on a large stump. In those days of ignorant, indestructible youth, I reacted to fear with anger, and I knelt down and searched out for a stout stick. Ignoring whatever slick-scaled creature slithered away from under my fingertips, I found one and I raised it over my head. "Come on, you son of a bitch," I screamed in defiance. "I'll knock your dang head off." When I looked again, the cat was gone. The wind rose up and howled some more, and I kept moving. When it died down again, and I heard that sound that wasn't wind, ahead of me in a small moonlit clearing, I could see a shadow darker than the other standing tall and bulky. Its eyes glowed in the moonlight. My grandmother's warnings of haints and boogers rang in my ears. I'd never paid much heed to those warnings before. I knew haints were ghosts, but she'd never described a booger to me. I had assumed it was all the overactive superstition of an old lady anyway, but now I wasn't so sure. Thinking it was better to be safe than sorry, I started toward where I thought home was. I'd like to say that I was too smart to run, but that would be a lie. I was too tired. All I could muster was a fast mosey. I didn't know if that thing was behind me, if it was even following me, and if it was catching up with me, or what it would do to me if it did catch me. I only knew I wanted to get home. I swam the river and staggered up onto the opposite bank, and feeling the exhaustion in my legs were like lead weights. There was no stopping, though, and I didn't know where that thing was, and I pushed on. A while later, I found myself on the highway a couple of miles from home, too exhausted now to take another step, and I stood there staring in the direction I wanted to be, listening for that strange sound that wasn't the wind, and looking like something that had been dragged out of the swamp when a farmer pulled up in his old truck. "You need a ride, boy?" he asked. I was too dirty to ride in the front with him, but he let me climb in the back and drop me off on the road in front of our mailbox. My grandmother was in her chair on the front porch with a cup of coffee in her hand and a fair-sized switch leaning against the wall. And with my last bit of energy, I opened the side gate and made my way to the porch as she called, "Where you been, boy?" I explained about the last of the hay and the approaching storm. I told her how my boss had said if I kept the moon over my shoulder, I'd find my way home. I told her how I got lost anyway. She sent me out to the pump house to clean up while she made biscuits and gravy. I guess I didn't do too good of a job cleaning up because after we ate, she sent me to the screened inside porch to sleep in a guest bed. A few hours later, I awoke to the sound of a ruckus in the drive, and peeking out, I saw my grandmother shaking her finger under the boss man's nose as she read him the riot act. "You darn idiot! A grown man and you don't realize the moon don't hang still in the sky? You ain't so big or so old that I won't wear out a switch on you." My boss kept his eyes on his boots. It was a good thing to stare at when Granny was on a rant. This is an email from Laura. This is really good. It's got several stories in one email, so this should be interesting. She writes, "After graduating from college in the mid-1980s, I went on a 6-month work exchange to the United Kingdom. I found a job in London at a once posh West End hotel that had seen better days. Now it catered to backpacking youths from all over the world. The staff was from far and wide, and one of my friends was from Italy, who coincidentally was also named Laura. She told me a story about her older brother, Fausto. They lived in the industrial north part of the nation, and Fausto was a postman with a rural route out of town. Normally, he enjoyed exercising in the fresh air as he delivered the mail, but one evening he came home uncharacteristically unsettled. It had been a hot day and a blinding, bright summer day. He had driven to the final and most remote part of his route and parked his mail truck, and he hand-carried the remaining letters on foot to the last few sparse households. It occurred to him that it was very still and he was alone. No one was out in the dusty country lane. There were no noises from the farms, from either people or animals. Troubled by this, he delivered the post to the last addressed and he began walking back to the truck at a fast pace. He was almost there when he heard some shuffling behind him, and he turned around expecting to greet one of the locals, but what he saw took his breath away. He froze in his tracks, and he watched in cold horror as a large naked man with long reddish-brown hair all over his body walked across the dirt road on all fours, paying no attention whatsoever to my friend's stunned brother. Now terrified, he dove into the mail truck and sped away to civilization. Laura never mentioned the words Sasquatch or Bigfoot. At the time, I didn't believe in them anyway. I imagine one of those unfortunate people with the genetic disease of... I can't even pronounce the word she writes here, but she says it's creepy enough anyway. Now, particularly after listening to people's Bigfoot stories from around the world, I wonder. I was a believer in UFOs long before I came to believe in Bigfoot, and with good reason. Back in the mid-1970s, when I was in junior high school, me and 3 of my friends stayed after school to watch a girls' basketball game. Afterward, Lisa's mother came to pick us up and take us all home. When we dropped off the first girl, I noticed that there was what appeared to be a stereotypical flying saucer that looked like it came right out of the mid-century science fiction movie hovering above us. It was round with a dome top, and it had multicolored lights all around it. It wasn't very big, maybe the size of a large car, but it was alarmingly close. It followed us to the next girl's house, and the whole time we were all craning around to see it. Lisa's mother complained that we were going to make her wreck the car, but we were too fascinated by the UFO to listen. We protested that it was still there and it was following us. Since I lived the furthest away, slightly out in the country, I was the last to be dropped off, and it followed us all the way to my house. And when we got there, I jumped out and ran inside as fast as I could. From my bedroom window, I could see the car drive away, but the UFO remained hovering outside. It seemed to be waiting for someone. I went to get my brother for validation. We watched it for 10 minutes, saying things like, "I can't believe it. What is that?" And we said it over and over again. It was probably less than half a football field off the ground, and it hung there in midair between our house and the neighbor's house. And then, with a sudden burst of impossible speed, it shot off at a steep angle into the night. We all talked about it for weeks. I'm not sure anyone else at the school believed us, but we didn't care, because 6 of us saw it. 30 years later, in 2004, I was in Arizona house-sitting for a friend. She lived on the west side of town, or rather outside of town, in a neighborhood of houses that were probably about 2 acres apart. I was staying in the casita behind the main house. A casita is a small one-bedroom house separate from the big one, usually for widowed mother-in-laws, allowing her to maintain her independence while keeping her nearby. And in Britain, they're called granny flats. Once you leave the city limits of Tucson, there are very few lights in the desert. There are neither street lights nor house lights, so it's dark. True to form, the little house that I was staying in and the yard around it were dark. I put a nightlight in the bathroom so I wouldn't trip or step on a critter such as the occasional tarantula or scorpion that might wander in if I got up in the night. I hadn't seen any nasties inside, but there was a gecko residing in the kitchen. And if he could get in, so could the others. I remember as a kid that our cousins in Texas would put newspapers on the floors at night so they could hear the scorpions rattling around if they got inside, but I digress. Holy crap. I would lose my crap if a scorpion crawled up on me at night. Anyway, sorry to go off on a tangent there. One night in the casita, I turned off the lights and I went to bed. And all of a sudden the nightlight in the bathroom popped loudly and went out along with all the electricity. I thought, oh great, I've blown a fuse. I got up in search of the electrical panel and I flipped the breaker, but nothing happened. I turned around and was rather startled to see a blue light shining through the skylight in the front room. What in the world could that be? I said to myself. Now, Tucson is a military town, and various aircraft can often be seen overhead any time, day or night. Thinking that was the case now, I opened the door and I stepped outside. I didn't get that far. As soon as I opened the door, I saw a brilliant column of bright blue light projected onto the rocky ground 30 feet away from the door, and above it was a UFO that looked nearly identical to the one I had seen as a schoolgirl back in Kentucky all those years before. This one was the same size as the other, about the size of a large car. It had the prototypical domed roof and colored lights around it, and like before, it was alarmingly close. It hovered there as if it were waiting. Now, I'm no Travis Walton. I've read the book and I've seen the movie Fire in the Sky, and there was no way I was going outside to bask in the blue light and be beamed up to meet any nefarious characters. So I shut the door and I went back to bed. I may or may not have pulled the covers up over my head like a child, I don't remember. After a few minutes, the electricity and the nightlight popped back on. I did not get up to investigate whether the blue light was still shining in the skylight. The next morning, I went outside to double check if there were any lights on posts nearby that could have projected the light into the yard. There were none. I know nearly nothing about aircraft, so I've seen a lot of things flying around the sky over the years that I could not identify. That doesn't mean that they were necessarily from outer space, but I will go out on a limb here and speculate that these two UFOs were actually alien spacecraft. All I know is that I wasn't about to find out. Okay, I hope you enjoyed those two stories. I thought I'd take a few minutes here at the end of this video and explain. I'm still getting a lot of correspondence about where are you? Aren't you putting up more podcasts? It's a terrible problem to have for people to enjoy what you do so much that they're so concerned that are you sick? Is someone in your family sick? We're praying for you and all this stuff. I've been doing this 5 years this month, and I've really poured a lot into it. And it's not my real job. The podcast is not my real job. I have a real job that I do all day. And so I took on too much work this summer. I shouldn't have done it, but I did. I was a little worried about the economy coming up, and I figured I'd rake as much work off in my lap as I could get, because you just never know what, this leadership that we have, they're always playing games with the economy. And, I'm just like you. I'm just trying to make a living and do the best I can with what I have. And so that's why I raked off too much work, but I'm hanging with it. It's going pretty good. I'm a little behind on a couple of jobs, but that's all it is. It's just, I'm just busy, and it'll be over soon, hopefully in November. I thought it'd be over in August, but it just keeps piling up. I'm not taking on more work. It's just some of these things get a little more complicated, and owners make changes, and it just takes time. They pay me for it, but I'm ready for a break. But I've got a month or two more of this, and then I'll be putting out more podcasts. So that's all it is. I haven't gone anywhere. I got an email from a guy who said, "Boy, you really screwed us on Steve Lilly." There's more Steve Lilly coming. I can't wait to sit down and start writing that. I have to be in a state of mind where things are quiet and I don't have a lot going through my head, things at home, grandkids running around, things like that, so I can write. I just have to be in a peaceful place when I write. And I haven't had that time. Another thing I've been doing is taking care of things around here. For 5 years, I've poured all my spare time, almost all my spare time, into this podcast, and I've neglected a lot of things I should have gotten done around my house. So starting about the end of July, if I had free time, instead of working on the podcast, I'd work on projects that I've let go for years. And I got caught up on that for the most part. There's a couple of things I need to do, a couple of big jobs that I need to do, but my wife's happy. Things look better around here. The yard looks good. Let's see, what else? Oh, I've gotten a few emails and several comments about people saying they're unsubscribing because I put out the little 60-second short videos. I can't help that. I don't know if you're trying to punish me because I'm doing shorts or what, but you don't have to watch the shorts. You're not required to watch anything I do. I'm not, YouTube is, you can watch whatever you want to watch on YouTube. And but I do those shorts because they're fun, and I can stay connected with YouTube that way. I can still continue to upload some kind of content. All I do is go back to old videos and pull out audio that I think is pretty good. Then I get I generate these images with an artificial intelligence website, and the images are so cool and the audio is pretty good. And I put them out in 60-second spots. And what that does is it keeps me connected. It lets YouTube know that I'm still involved, and it reaches out. I've been able to attract a little bit more of an audience that way, because people that would normally not click on my videos, they're sitting there like on TikTok. Now, I have a TikTok page, but I just put home stuff on there, just the dogs and stuff. I think I have a couple of Bigfoot story things on there, but people will sit and they'll just thumb through these shorts, one right after another. They just thumb through them. You don't necessarily pick the ones you want to see. You're just thumbing through them. Like, I know a lot of you guys use TikTok. Well, YouTube has the shorts. It's the same thing. And so people come across it, and maybe 1 out of 10,000, they say, oh, I like the way that story was told, and they'll come over to the channel and listen. So it helps me attract people that normally wouldn't come to the channel. So, but if you don't like the shorts, you don't have to watch them. I mean, they're real easy to identify. They're in the vertical image format, like your phone, if you're holding it straight up as opposed to sideways. And all my videos that are normal, longer format videos will be in this full 1080p 1920 by 1080 format on the screen. So you don't have to watch shorts, and I'm going to keep doing them because I like doing them. They're easy to do. I can knock out 10 in a couple of hours and schedule them out over the next 2 weeks and forget about it. So that's the thing about shorts. I guess that's all I wanted to say. I'm sure there was some other stuff that's people have asked about. More Steve Lilly coming. I'm working on Blood Eagle. It's coming. Just made a deal with a guy who, well, I'll tell you about it when that comes up, but it's a series of stories that are fantastic. And then I've got all kind of ideas about stuff to write and things like that, but I just can't get in the frame of mind with this work going on. And I can't find the time to do it, but I will. That time is coming, Lord willing. And all this busyness will be behind me. You know, this summer every summer comes up, I say, I'm not going to work hardly at all this summer. I'm going to do all this and do all that. I'm riding my motorcycle across the country. I'm going to do all kind of podcasts. I'm going to do this or that. And every single summer I get covered up with work. But that's what we do. You know, we got to work for a living. So that's what I do. Anyway, thank you all. Last thing I'll say is, thank you all for checking on me. It's a good problem to have, to have people that follow the channel who enjoy it so much that they think they feel like I'm approachable enough that they can send me an email and let me know they're concerned and praying for me and my family. And if there's anything wrong, let them know, and specifically they can pray about, but there's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong at all. Everything's fine. And I love doing this more than my regular job, but this doesn't pay as much as my regular job, so I keep doing my regular job. I'm staying where the money's at. And then I do this because I love it. And so thank you all for checking on me and keeping up with me, and the hundreds of people who have asked, where's the next Steve Lilly, and when is Blood Eagle coming out, and all that stuff. It's all coming as soon as I can get to it. Just as soon as I can get to it. So hang with me. All right, I'll quit rambling. I think what does that say? 7 minutes. I was only going to talk for a couple of minutes, but just want to let y'all know that. Thanks for watching. We'll see you guys on the next one. I appreciate you.